Sometimes the real story of a ghost town is about the people who lived in it. We'll show you a place where one special person left her mark on the lives of people in a very unique way, right here on Ghost Towns and More. Tucked up in a remote, wind-swept corner of northeastern Nevada are the remains of a town with a unique history. In the trailing decades after the gold rushes of the West in the mid-19th century, gold was first discovered in this area around 1870. Mining districts were formed for what was hoped to be a very profitable venture. But by 1883, with no eureka moments, the place was abandoned. Then in 1888, a new discovery led to the opening of another mine, and things looked like they might lead to long-term success. About 200 people began to live in the area and a smelter was built, but once again, the findings just didn't, as they say, pan out. In 1905, a new surge of interest in the area brought more investment. A new town was formed named Contact, taken from a geological term which describes the line along which two different rock formations meet. At this time, things really got underway. By 1907, 300 people were living in Contact, and a concentrating and power plant were built to accommodate the ore from the mines. A stage line opened up to the north, bringing passengers and freight from Twin Falls, Idaho. By 1923, new buildings went up, such as an office building and the Fairview Hotel. The Oregon Short-Line Railroad reached town with a new depot to go with it. During these boom years, another industry began to take root in Contact during the nationwide ban on the sale and import of all alcoholic beverages from 1921 to 1933, known as the Prohibition era. With Contact being so far removed from larger metropolitan areas, this made the place ideal for the illegal manufacture of whiskey, or moonshine. The process was called bootlegging, originating from the time when Civil War soldiers concealed pint whiskey containers inside their boots under their trousers. Prohibition was destined to fail from the start, as the ban on alcohol only led to mass organized crime for those wishing to provide the beverage to those who would pay almost anything to get it. Contact was booming in bootlegging, which contributed greatly to the town's economy, perhaps in some ways as much as mining did. It seemed most everyone was in on it, and those who weren't knew those who were. Those that weren't major distributors who wanted the beverage were simply making their own in their basements and cellars. At one point, there were reportedly 6 major moonshine operations from 1917 all the way to the repeal of Prohibition in December of 1933. Many in law enforcement realized that trying to stop it was a losing proposition, and perhaps these lawmen wanted the beverages for themselves and turned a blind eye to what was going on. Contact had a town judge who knew everyone that was involved, but refused to participate because he knew the prosecutorial consequences would be severe for him. So instead, he went into business selling raw materials that just happened to come in handy for people who wanted to build stills with needed supplies to make their own whiskey. He told himself that what people did with the merchandise he sold was none of his business. Life prospered in the small town, but 2 years after the beautiful Fairview Hotel was built in 1924, it caught fire and completely burned in just 30 minutes. The mining operations began to experience downturns, although there was demand for copper during the war years, which helped keep the doors open for the local businesses and industry. Being a major provider of homemade whiskey for so many years, Contact was hit especially hard during the Great Depression. But the final nail in the coffin was when Prohibition was repealed in 1933. Suddenly, the demand for exclusive Contact whiskey vanished overnight. People packed up and left town except for those few families who were destitute or had nowhere else to go. There were only about 100 people left when someone new moved into town. A woman named Marguerite Patterson Evans was hired to take a position in the struggling town as a teacher and principal. Marguerite wrote to her sister-in-law describing the conditions of the dying town.
Contact consists of 2 general stores, a crude family hotel, 2 saloons, a post office, an elementary school building, and a high school that occupies an old pool hall.
With everyone else relying on welfare to survive, Marguerite realized she needed to do more than just teaching reading, writing, and arithmetic. The girls who attended her classes wore dresses that were so threadbare that many of them were covered with patches. Although she had little time off, Marguerite decided to make the long trip to the town of Elko, over 100 miles away, to the Red Cross office to see if she could get enough fabric for each girl to have 3 dresses and new underwear. With patterns and fabric in hand, Marguerite returned and had the girls in her class stay after school, where she taught them all how to cut out fabric and sew the new clothing. The girls were so excited to have the new dresses, especially knowing they made them themselves, that Marguerite had a difficult time getting the girls to go home after school. Marguerite, along with other teachers in town, assisted with sicknesses that ranged from measles, strep throat, scarlet fever, and the flu. They used what supplies and materials they could get in town, including 100 proof whiskey from the saloons, to sterilize thermometers. Marguerite Evans left Contact after her first year there. Her influence on her students was likely remembered for many years, especially with the girls who grew up knowing valuable skills that benefited them and the lives of others. Marguerite moved away and served in other schools and organizations throughout northeastern Nevada, retiring in 1950. She passed away in Elko in 1985 at about the age of 84. The town of Contact continued to decline. A devastating fire in 1942 wiped out many of the buildings, and the railroad depot closed in 1952. The rails were pulled up in 1978, and only a handful of residents still call the sparse settlement home. Not much remains of the once busy town, with the community social hall remains still standing and is the most prominent feature left in town. Several old, run-down structures remain in the sparse fields where vegetation is now taking over. For those who love historical sites, Contact is worth a stop to visit when traveling to nearby Jackpot, Nevada, where modern hotels and restaurants are just 15 miles to the north.